Hello and welcome to Shattered Lives. I'm Paul Healy and I'm joined today by a really wonderful person who I'm very appreciative of her time, Hazel Behan. Hazel, thanks for being with
Paul,
us.
thanks so much for having me. It's a new experience being on a podcast. So yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic to be on here. Thanks so much.
no problem. And we were only just talking before we started, I suppose, that there's a huge benefit, isn't there, in kind of doing this kind of an interview. I think we're
Yeah.
both in agreement that a podcast interview is a way of hearing somebody in much greater detail, and I'm happy to be able to give you that platform and not have to so to speak cherry pick certain parts
Yeah.
for a headline, you know.
Look, there's a huge place for printed media. As we
Mm,
said, I think it's unfortunate that sometimes that the emotion and the person on the other side of that print gets lost. So
mm,
yeah, this is definitely a fantastic way to get the person across and the story and the emotion behind that as well for people.
mm.
So hopefully your listeners will enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce you to some extent, but anyone who has been following, I suppose, the news cycle over the past year would be familiar with your name. And, I know you've been quite outspoken and been to a number of events since speaking out as an advocate for women. And, um, it's a difficult thing to introduce, isn't it? But you
Yeah,
obviously, you went through something very, very difficult in
yeah,
2004 at the hands of a man who you eventually managed to get on trial last year.
that's
And
it.
I suppose the reason why it became a quote unquote big story is because that man was Christian Brueckner, who
Yeah.
is obviously a suspect, the chief suspect in the disappearance and murder of Madeleine McCann. But it's not really why we're here today, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it. But
Absolutely.
I suppose I'd just go back to, I don't really know where the best place to start, but I'd ask you, yeah, I suppose seeing as we're talking about headlines and the fact that that became a big story, was that a difficult thing for you to navigate, just dealing with it
Oh,
being in the media every day?
well, I'll give you an idea. I was sat in work. I worked at the time for a very wonderful TD. I loved my job, and then COVID hit, and we were working from home, so that was very much a force for me.
Mm,
And we were long hours, longer than the norm. Trying to kind of deal with people's fears surrounding COVID and everything. So it was the 3rd of June of 2020. It was actually my brother's birthday. And our family WhatsApp group was hopping that day.
mm,
And to be honest with you, I didn't check it because I was just too busy, and you're just too busy in work. And when I did check it throughout the day, I seen that one of my brothers, who happens to be called Paul as well,
oh,
had shared a link
mm,
into the group from RTE. And when you can kind of read the thumbnail on it or whatever, and it said something about Madeleine McCann. And to
mm,
be honest with you, if I'm being totally fair, and with the greatest of respect, at that stage, I was just overwhelmed by so much anguish from people that were ringing me. I was like, I just couldn't face reading another article about Madeleine McCann now. I'll look at it later. So
yeah.
that's exactly what happened. And that day in particular, it was actually about 10 o'clock or after that night that I sat down after work. We'd had a really, really long day, made a cup of tea. And as you do, I was floating about on my phone and I said, I'll have a look at it. And the minute I read it, it was like, my God, this is too much for me now. And I genuinely felt sick. And I know people might not understand that, but when you've given a description of a person,
Yeah.
and you've stood to that description for, at that time, 16 years, and that's all that you have,
Mm,
when you're reading it back for something that's like, I never put them two, like the two crimes together. It was
yeah.
never a thing or a belief of mine because naively enough, I didn't think that somebody who would commit crimes like that against women would commit a crime like that against a child. I
Mm,
just thought that they were two different kind of offenders or perpetrators. So from that day, I contacted the people in Operation Grange, and it was just from there that my life in the media snowballed. And I'd never had any preparation for that. Like that wasn't something that I
mm.
was prepared for at all. No, at all.
Well, just to explain to people again, if you haven't read on the story, obviously Christian Brueckner was named as the suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, and this is the context in which you saw his face plastered all over the media,
Yeah.
and you knew straight away. Would that be fair to say that That this was the man who
Yeah.
attacked you.
And I know, again, look, it's very difficult, and I've read threads, and anyone who says they don't read about themselves if you're printed online is a liar, because
Hmm.
you do.
Mm.
And I take on board an awful lot of the comments that people have made, that how would you know somebody by their eyes? This is why they block out people's eyes, to try and hide their identity.
Yeah.
The minute I seen this person, I didn't know. I knew he was fair. I knew that he was blonde, or very fair anyway. I knew his build. I knew his body. But I had never seen his face. I only seen his eyes.
Mm.
And I understand completely how that might be very hard for people to understand, how I would recognize them again.
Yeah.
But I did, and I do.
Mm.
And the thing about it is, when you're put into this extreme situation with a person who is essentially carrying out this horrific crime on you and causing you all this hurt and pain, um, you, your body or your mind, I don't know what it is, your body gives up, but your mind has to try and find something to focus on. And all I had of him was his eyes. That's the only thing that I could see that wasn't covered by something,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, and they kind of, I know they used this kind of quote that I said, but I genuinely mean it. His eyes like literally bore into me. And they kind of essentially like stamped themselves as a memory inside my mind that, unfortunately, um, for me, there's something I see a lot of, without
Mm.
choosing. I see it in my sleep. I've seen it for the last 20 years, nearly 21 years now. So when I seen them again in printed press in front of me,
Just
I
clicked.
can't, yeah, I can't tell you the feeling, because if I'm being honest, I thought it was a dream. It's like you kind of step outside yourself. It's like a detachment. It's like, this can't be happening now. I can't be dealing with this all these years later. I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. And to be fair, if it had just been me, I don't
Mm.
know if I would have contacted the 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 police or whoever, Operation Grange. Obviously, I probably, unfortunately, like many other victims and survivors of gender-based violence, they don't get the opportunity to do that. So
Yeah.
I felt a responsibility for this little girl as well. Like, if he was the same person, which, I believe he is, that I needed to do something for her,
Mm.
because oddly, I just felt this real sense of responsibility.
Mm.
Um, because knowing that how I was treated in Portugal, by the police and stuff there, knowing that I could have prevented that. I know I couldn't have. I know it was out of my hands, but I
Jesus, no. Yeah.
felt, but I
Yeah.
felt that responsibility.
Mm.
And then, I found out afterwards that that he's currently serving a sentence for the rape of a 72-year-old pensioner,
Mm.
Diana, and that was a year after what happened to me, and not too far up the road from where that was. So when all this information started coming to me, through the media, if I'm being totally honest, I couldn't, like, coincidence is one thing, but to have a person with that description, with them eyes that I recognize in my soul,
Yeah.
living in the same area, committing crimes within like a very short, small like radius, um, at the same time, like
Yeah.
it would be hard for me or for people not to think there's something not right here. This person is clearly connected to this. So,
Mm.
look, I'm not a police officer. I'm not a detective. I don't profess to be. I don't want to be. I leave them off to do their job. There's a huge part of what they have come up with themselves, in
Mm.
my case, that I don't know about, that I'm not privy to, which probably sounds really odd, but we're not considered victims of a crime, unfortunately. I am what's called a witness to a crime.
Right.
So as a witness to a crime, and this is true not just in Germany, but in Ireland too, but as a witness to a crime, I'm essentially that. So if I witness somebody kicking a window in on O'Connell Street, God forbid, you witness that, but
Mm.
I'm put in the same category as somebody who witnesses something like that, or somebody robbing a car, or somebody, like, we are just witnesses to crimes.
Mm.
So that doesn't allow for us to have as much access, I suppose, to what's going on.
what they're investigating.
Yeah,
I just want
yeah,
to take you back to
yeah,
the moment that you contacted the officers involved in
yeah,
Operation Grange, and just tell me a bit about that process, if you can, of
yeah.
making that contact, and I suppose the first interviews that you would have had. And did you feel that you were being believed, that they were taking you seriously?
Well, the first contact was, the minute I seen this RTE article or, online news thing that my brother had sent, I went deep diving into everything to try and see where it was because for everyone and its mother, you'd want to be living under a rock if you didn't know about Madeleine McCann.
Hmm.
I wasn't a follower of, the story.
Yeah.
I knew of it. So I started going looking. I hadn't read anything before then. And I found on one of them, I can't tell you which one, but one of the news outlets online had like a video of one of the Operation Grange police basically appealing and looking for people to give information, to either ring a number or send an email. I was in no fit state to ring a number. So I decided that night, it was about 11:15 that night, to send an email. It was very brief. I didn't go into huge, detail. I just basically said, who I was, what had happened very briefly, where it happened and the year, and that I felt the description that they gave matched what I had given to the police. By the next morning, I was contacted by Operation Grange. They were fantastic. Like,
Hmm.
I have to be honest. I didn't for 1 second feel that I was disbelieved at all. And a little bit further down the road, I had learned that they were actually looking for me. So it
Oh,
turned out that
really?
yeah,
Okay.
I had been on their radar anyway because they were looking for other unsolved crimes,
Mm.
that they felt were connected to this person. But I mean, I had never had any contact from anybody. Like, so it kind of went from there. There's an awful lot of red tape and bureaucracy surrounding
Mm.
different states and their laws and their legalities and how you kind of different things work. So I was essentially transferred to the German police, to the
Mm.
BKA, which is the German form of the FBI. Fantastic people.
Mm.
Like, I mean, you think the Germans are efficient, but this has just taken it to another level. Like, I've
Mm.
never experienced their level of workmanship in my life. Like, they were extremely diligent at their job, but extremely caring in the same breath. And I was very lucky to, I suppose, be under the care of this lead detective who really took me under his wing because I obviously don't speak German.
Mm.
And again, respectfully, I've had to turn down in like offers to go to weddings and such in Germany because I can't listen to German people speak English. It actually turns me stomach. So even
Really?
listening to them on the phone, I
Mm.
was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to, like, I don't know. And I said it to him. I said, I genuinely don't think that I'm able to
Yeah.
talk to you because you're making me sick. Like, I can't listen to your accent. It's just, so he said to me, well, my job here is to try and make you think different and better about German people. So, and
Oh,
he
that's a
did.
lovely thing to say.
Yeah.
Effectively, you were triggered by the German accent, like in terms of
Oh my God.
yeah,
It's horrendous.
yeah,
No offense to German people. Like, I've
yeah.
since met some lovely German people, but if I, even in the years leading up to that, if I had been in somewhere, you know, out in town or, out with my friends or in a coffee shop on a random Sunday morning, like, and I
Mm.
heard somebody speaking German or German with an English accent, like English with a German accent, sorry,
Mm.
I'd have a panic attack and I'd have to be carted out there. Like,
Mm.
so, I mean, I couldn't. I just, yeah, it just made it still like it doesn't sit very well with me, particularly men speaking English, German men speaking English. But look,
Mm.
I've kind of, I've grown a bit to understand that it was one German person. And I always knew that, like, I didn't have this like hatred for German people. It was
Yeah,
just I couldn't stomach the accent, to be honest. Which I probably again sounds really it's strange, but it's just one of them things that took me back because I didn't
yeah,
have much else other than his eyes and his accent, like, so
yeah.
you're kind of left with very little, like,
And that's I think it's an important thing to talk about. Maybe it's not talked about enough that someone who has gone through a trauma like what you have gone through,
hmm
um, it's not like it's happened and it's over. You have to live with that on a daily basis, and even the most random small things, as you've mentioned, the
Yeah.
accent can bring you right back, and literally bring you right back. Not just like a memory, like you're brought back
Oh,
as
you're
though
there.
you're
The
there.
fear is there. Like,
Mm,
I don't take any pleasure in telling you this or sharing this, but I think it's important, not just for
mm,
myself, but obviously for other people who would be in a similar position, not just because of gender-based violence, but you know, PTSD, as they call it, which I hate even using them words, but that's what it is. And I unfortunately have what's called complex PTSD. So I've
mm.
suffered with it like pretty pretty full on for the past 20 years. It's become a part of my life. He's like a buddy that sits beside me all the time.
Mm.
Um, but it can be hugely debilitating. Panic attacks, I don't have any control over. I can go from having 20 in a day to having one or none, which is
Mm.
fantastic.
Mm.
They wake me up out of my sleep. It's not a conscious thought. It's not something I put any effort into doing. In fact, I do quite the opposite.
Yeah.
I've been carted out of concerts. I love music, like absolutely love it. But I've been carted out concerts more times than I've had hot dinners because at the time, it's all these things I think in the back of your mind. You're in this packed place. You don't know who he is. You don't know if he's there. I know logical mind would say, sure, surely he's not going to be at a random Jay-Z concert in Dublin and the point, like, but
Yeah.
you don't really know that. I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell myself 110% that he's not there. And then
Mm-hmm.
it snowballs. It really is like this mad part of your brain that unfortunately is triggered. And then it's again simple things like music. I made my way to Portugal with a little boombox CD player and two CDs that my
Mm.
brother had burned onto a disc for me, and one of them was Kanye West's
Mm.
college school dropout or whatever it was, and when it all falls down, that song. And when I hear that, I am transported back to 2004, but not for all the
Wow.
good reasons that you would think, because there's a huge part of me that I've spoken about this with other people who've experienced similar that doesn't leave that time. You're very much stuck there. Not by choice. I'd give anything not to be there in my mind. And for that obviously to never have happened.
Yeah.
But it's like something is just imprinted on you. It literally becomes another limb, like it's another part of who you are. And the sad thing about it is I didn't choose that. Like I didn't like people who go through things like that, it's not by choice. I didn't go out and get a tattoo that I'm stuck with for the rest of my life, but I made the choice to get it.
Mm.
It's not one of them. This is something that, it to not to sound dramatic, but it murders the person that you were. You're gone. Like you're
Mm.
literally expected afterwards to just get on with life. And you don't even know who you are.
Mm.
I don't mean to sound all airy fairy and people say, oh, find out who you really are inside and all. I didn't know who I was. I pretended to be the person that I knew I had been, but she was gone.
Mm.
She wasn't there anymore. Um, and he took that. I didn't have any choice in that. And I think the hardest part of that kind of journey, I suppose, I mean, I hate that word, but that moving forward for me was actually getting to like this new person that I become because I didn't really like her. Like I didn't want
Mm.
to be her.
Mm.
I had I had other things that I wanted to do. I was a person before all this happened to me. I went to Portugal for a summer to work, and I was 20. I had so many different plans. I'd enrolled in college. I'd all these different things like that I'd wanted to do, and they were all gone.
Mm.
So I think another part of what's forgotten is the person. Like I wasn't. I'm not just Hazel Behan who was raped. I'm not just that person. I was a person before that, and I am a person now, but I'm just a very different one.
And 20 is really young. Like, I mean,
Mm.
you're only starting out in life, and
You
to have
think you know it
something,
all, but you haven't a clue. Yeah,
mm,
yeah.
like, that's the prime of your life, the time of your life where you're kind of discovering yourself, and then to have that happen, yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know, I don't know if I've had the right words, but it's a stumbling block that you never get over. Then,
It
it's
completely
you've been,
shakes your core.
mm,
It absolutely, it's like if you were to put kind of like to imagine like, the plates shifting underneath your feet, like,
Mm,
it's like an earthquake, and the damage that it leaves
mm,
is just unfixable. Like, you can't be fixed. There's nothing that can be cured. There's no tablet or meditation or well-being wellness class. They're all fantastic. There's a place for them all on this journey towards, this new person, but they're not going to fix it. Nothing
yeah.
is ever going to take away the fact that that happened. So,
Mm,
for me, I think the hardest part of that was the control I felt he still had in my life and still does have. Hate
mm,
admitting that, but he does. Like,
mm,
um, I have panic attacks because of him. I am afraid because of him. I have developed, different quirks in my life. Like, I won't travel on holidays without like a portable door lock, because of him.
wow.
I, my family have suffered because of him. My friends have suffered. Like, this is all because of him. And not to quote Giselle or to go off, but I firmly am like so behind that, because the shame is his. It's not mine. I don't feel shame.
Mm,
I really, really don't. I didn't ask. I didn't choose. I didn't do any of that to kind of partake in what happened. But I do feel actually very sad for her, for
yeah.
that, girl who was 20 and full of the joys of spring and living her best life, getting the best hand she ever had, working
Mm,
extremely, extremely hard, mind you, like 18-hour days, um, to just, you know, educate myself in a different way.
mm,
My dad always said that travel is the best, because he was terrified of flying. So traveling is the best education you'll ever get. He was always just too afraid to do it. So
mm,
my parents like were terrified with me going anywhere. They didn't want me to go with the backpack to Australia because they were too afraid of me going, which I completely get now as a mammy. But
mm,
at the time, I'd went away previous to that to Mallorca for a summer. I did well. There was well-minded, all that stuff. So when I was offered to do it again, they nearly pushed me to go. They encouraged me to go because I had such a great time that they were like, you learned so much, you had made so many friends, go and do it again. So
yeah.
I had their blessing. They felt safe and secure. I felt safe and secure. So for that safety net to be just completely ripped out from under you, I don't know. Like, I can't foresee the future, but 21 nearly years on, I have never got over that. Like,
Well, I mean,
um,
and how could you be expected to be? I mean, that's
mm,
a really horrendous thing to happen, and it was entirely, yeah. You'd like to be able to say you can go away and enjoy yourself, and nothing like that will ever happen, because you kind of think, that's something you hear in the movies. That's something that doesn't really happen. It's not real life.
no, no,
Um,
certainly not.
and we did say, and I won't go into I don't think it's, people can read the graphic details of what you went through.
Yeah.
But I will say like there was nothing that you could do in any way to prevent it. It was entirely random. That monster chose
Hmm.
you that night,
Yeah.
and you forever have to deal with the outcome of that. And I imagine, as you're even saying, how you're dealing with it. Like, I don't know whether you ask yourself the question, Jesus, there's something I could have done different, but really,
You do.
there's
I mean, I
nothing.
think it's
Yeah.
natural for anyone in lots of
Mm,
different circumstances in
mm,
life, not just like something as horrendous as this. Like, of course,
mm,
I asked myself questions. It was the first night I'd ever walked home alone.
mm,
And when I say walked home alone, I walked like about 100 meters across the road. Like, I didn't, not that even it makes any odds. If I had gone running down the main street in me nude, it doesn't warrant anything that would ever
no.
happen like that,
Mm,
but I
mm,
didn't.
mm,
I literally walked across a small little footbridge over a road, and
mm,
into the hotel where I lived. So, um, I often said, my mum was always, when we were kids, saying, never walk home on your own, even if you fall out with each other, all
mm,
this. Um, and even to this day, at like nearly 42, I'd never walk home on my own. And I know that's obviously from other reasons as well, but I
mm,
never did walk home alone when I was younger, even if I did fall out with my mates. But this was
mm.
literally like I could see the front door going into, like, I was just across the road. So I didn't feel like I was taking any chances. And unfortunately, females have to, weigh up all these things all the time,
Yeah.
which is horrendous, but it's true. Like, and I didn't, when I weighed up that situation, there was no weighing it up. I literally seen the door, it was across the road. I'll go there and I'm going home. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't invite anybody into my home that night. I didn't, even if I did, it still, wouldn't have warranted that, but I didn't. I went to bed, I went to sleep. So like I don't own anything on that level. Like I don't feel any responsibility or any shame or
Yeah.
guilt or any of that kind of stuff for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose will always be questions in myself of what I maybe could have done differently or why he chose me. What did I do for him to pick me?
Do
I
you
don't
feel,
know.
or I mean, do you think that he must have been watching you for some time, that he had pre-planned it to a degree?
I feel from what I know of this person now that I was definitely on his radar for some reason or another.
Mm.
Look, for predators like that, I obviously ticked an awful lot of boxes. I was a young girl living by myself in a foreign country. I worked with kids all day. They all knew my name. He woke me calling my name. So, it would lead me to believe that he had obviously done his homework beforehand. And genuinely, it was the first and only time I'd ever went home by myself. I had a boyfriend at the time. He either walked me home or I was in like a group of friends that we all lived in the same apartment blocks. Like, so we all always went home together. We never kind of were alone. So maybe that was just the opportunity that he was looking for. I don't know. He
Yeah.
chose to revoke his right to silence, so he doesn't have to speak. But unfortunately, I didn't have that luxury.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know his inner thoughts. He seems to journal them a lot, from what I know, and they're pretty horrendous. But yeah, it's very hard to understand the mind of somebody like that when it's so far removed from normal,
Yeah.
everyday kind of your average Joe soap. So a person who would pre-plan something like that needs more than therapy in my head, to be honest.
It's I think you're paying him a lot of maybe more respect than he's due, and that's a testament to your character in calling him a person, even, because God,
Yeah.
what kind of person would carry that out? It's a
I won't tell
monstrous
you the
thing.
names that I call him off microphones now, to be quite honest.
Well, feel free if you want.
Yeah, no, look,
No.
I think, there's certainly an awful lot of words that have came out of my mouth about that
Mm.
person over the years,
Mm.
but I try my very best to not allow for him to make me any more angry than I genuinely am.
Mm.
You hear all this stuff, oh, forgiveness is the key. No, sorry, I'll
You
never
don't
forgive him
forgive.
for what he did to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever. Like, I don't think he deserves that. Like, Joe.
And I just want to fast forward a bit to go back,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah.
Obviously, the trial happened
Mm,
in Germany, and you had to go through that grueling process. And I want to talk to you about that. But
yeah.
the end result of it was that Christian Brueckner, there wasn't enough evidence, is what the judge said, to convict him of raping you, and
Hmm.
so he was acquitted of that.
Yeah.
But I'm taking it by our own conversation. Even I'm that regardless of that court finding, you still definitely firmly believe that he is the man responsible.
Yes, I do. And I don't make that, again, I don't make that kind of assumption lightly. Like, I don't just assume this because somebody else has said it or it's printed in a newspaper. Like, I know who was in that room that night now. And I suppose there's a part of me that, I don't know if comfort is the right word, but there is comfort in that because I know where he is at this moment in time. But
Yeah.
the there's no doubt in my mind that he's the person who did this to me because of the evidence that was presented in court, and a lot of it I didn't get to see. My experience in court, if I'm being truly honest, was horrendous. I was absolutely annihilated in court. I was
Mm.
slaughtered on that stand. I had to
Because
sit in a very, yeah, sorry, go on.
well, I was just going to say that's didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, but
No, you're fine.
that's the part maybe that I wanted to focus on. In that,
Yeah,
you had to go and you had to sit in a courtroom, and let alone you had to face this person every day sitting opposite you. You had to get up and recount in graphic detail
yeah.
what you suffered, and then to be scrutinized, I suppose, by his legal counsel, and to
Yeah.
be made out as though you're lying, I suppose.
Mm. See, the sad fact of it is that, you're kind of, not you're kind of, you are made feel like you've committed a crime here, that you're the one
Hmm.
on trial. Because as I said, he had, invoked his right to silence, which unfortunately he's entitled to do. But I again didn't have that luxury. So this is not just like, I wasn't just questioned on the ins and outs of what happened in that room, you know,
Mm.
um, because nobody's going to tell me any different. Nobody's going to tell me I'm a liar for that, because I know exactly what I relive that every day in my life. So don't tell me that that didn't happen, because I know it did.
Yeah.
Um, However, the issues that I don't have an issue with them questioning me about that. I really don't. And if any defense counsel is worth their salt, they're going to question me on it too. That's their job. I get that.
Yeah.
However, outside of that questioning, or that line of questioning, who I am as a person shouldn't matter.
Mm.
The people that I may or may not have dated when I decide to have sex, what I like during sex, none of that has absolutely anything to do with the fact of what happened in that room. My counselling notes, like my
Yeah.
years of counselling notes of going to see my counsellor to seek the therapy that I needed to recover from, well, or I hate using the word recover, but to move on with my life in some way, are all available to him again and his defense to use against me.
It's crazy.
I could have went in, not every counseling session when you're living with something like this is all about rape.
Hmm.
It's navigating your life after it. So in navigating your life afterwards, it could be going in and giving out about your husband one of the days.
Hmm.
Could be going in and saying, how do I approach this with my kids? Like it's not all surrounding that. It's figuring out who this new person is. So you're trying to get the tools that you need to kind of keep moving forward with your life. So
Mm.
they got to see and read all of that. He got to see and read all of that. And he also got the opportunity to be able to see just how much he had affected my life, which I just feel so that really, I felt really violated by that. And just the line of questioning that they were allowed to ask me, which had no bearing on what happened that morning. And I know this sounds very little, maybe in a lot of people's worlds, but for me it was a huge thing. The courtroom itself on television, or maybe in photographs, looks huge.
Mm.
It's really, really not. It's actually quite a small room, and it's nothing like the court that I've ever, through work I've been in courts before, and it was nothing like that. It was essentially just a big room with really, really high windows at the back of it, and five judges sat on a stage.
That's it.
Um, and there's a row of tables on one side and a row of tables on the other, and there's a small little table in the middle of the room, and that little table was for me.
Mm.
Um,
So
and I
how
felt,
far how far away was Christian Brueckner from yourself in the room, for example?
oh, I'd say maybe about 10 feet away from me.
Mm.
But what bothered me the most of all of that, of the whole seating thing, because when I seen where I'd be sitting and all that, my heart, I was like, oh my God, it's bad enough having to breathe in the same airspace as this fucker. But sorry, I didn't mean to use bad language.
It's
I
fine.
swore I
We
wouldn't.
we
My
curse all the
friends will
time on
laugh
this
now and
podcast.
my friends will laugh now and they listen back because I said I swore I wouldn't do that. But anyway, sorry. So, but it was when I seen where I'd be sitting and stuff like that. It brought me huge panic, that I would,
Mm.
because I really thought the room was bigger. But what bothered me the most was that his lawyer, as they called them over in Germany, had been given the permission to strategically place my chair. So the table was turned to face him
Right.
for the duration of the time that I was there, which was 2 full days, 2 8-hour
Mm.
days.
Mm.
And I had not only to sit in the same room as him, to walk past him, to, to breathe in the same air as him, and overcome, I suppose, all that myself. But then to have to sit and look at him. And I'm one of these people that I don't look at the floor when I'm talking. I'll always address, I kept saying to myself, have your manners no matter what. So, whoever spoke to me, I addressed them. But it's very difficult when his lawyer is literally sitting shoulder to shoulder with him.
Mm.
And you're trying to answer this man back, even though I didn't want to. But I said, I'm not letting myself down here. I'm going to look this lawyer in the eye when I'm answering him back, even though he was being so mean to me. Um, but I couldn't, like, you can't help them. But when you're facing this person for the whole time that you're there, it's actually it just breaks you. I think that, I don't know, it's like the whole process of what happened and the rebuilding your life and all that stuff is horrendous. Like, but putting yourself through out there, like I sat in a courtroom with him, with all these people, and I think 50 odd press members behind me typing away. So all you can hear is tick, 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 tick. So they're literally sucking in every word that you're saying.
Yeah.
And you're on a stage, I know that probably, like, you're literally on show for the world there, and
Mm-hmm.
they're asking you questions that are just so irrelevant, and nobody stands up for you.
Yeah.
Nobody says, hang on a second, you know, you shouldn't be asking this girl that, because it has no, like, nobody stands up for you.
Mm.
And on the first day, I won't lie to you, I left that courtroom on the first day and I went to, my poor little mammy was sat in a room off the court because she wasn't allowed in the courtroom for whatever reason. But she was
Mm.
very well minded now, I will say. But I went into her, and a few times I had to be carried into her. But I just said to her, man, tapping out now. I'm done. I can't do it
Really.
anymore. Um, I just, I felt like somebody had wrung me out, you know. There was
Mm.
certain lines of questioning, of the aftermath of how, the injuries that I was left with and of how they affect me in my life now. Um, that while I understand maybe to a certain extent why they want to know how it affects my life now, it doesn't have any bearing on what he did then. So I feel they wanted to make a spectacle out of me for the audience that was there watching.
And that
Um,
was physical injuries they were referring to, not even
yes,
emotional. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and things like, do I go to cross-dressing clubs, or
What?
did I go to cross-dressing clubs? Sorry, in when I
Mm.
lived in Portugal, I said
Mm.
I didn't know. I said maybe I did go into a club and I didn't know it was, but it wasn't something I frequented. And what if I did? So
Mm.
what? Like, I don't. It doesn't. I don't understand. I never understood it, and I won't understand that line of questioning.
Mm.
Uh, from
No, it's
anybody.
it's an incredible thing for any victim to do, and I've seen it time and again, and it's always amazing to see to take someone to court and to have to sit there and be scrutinized. I'm thinking only recently of the Conor McGregor case and Nikita
Yeah,
Hand,
she's a
um,
lovely, lovely girl.
and
Fantastic woman as well.
incredible. And it just I'm just thinking of what you said about day one, and I know that she was certainly day one very, very upset as well, and you could see when she left that courtroom. I don't know what was going on in her mind, but visibly she looked, God, almost like as if, what am I doing here? Because this,
Oh yeah,
you're just totally put through your ringer in these trials. You are completely and totally scrutinized,
yeah.
and everything is up for debate. And
Everything.
I can imagine that you must wonder, geez, do these people believe me at all? Like, that must be
Oh
really,
no,
really
I
hard.
felt that I wasn't believed in court. I was
Mm-hmm.
believed by the German, the BKA, 100%. I've no doubt about that at all.
Mm.
I didn't feel believed by the judge, or the judges, sorry, should I say, at
Mm.
all. I felt as if I was a waste of their time. I felt to a certain extent that they wanted to just make a spectacle out of me, and I didn't appreciate it, if I'm being honest.
Mm.
But it's when you leave court after your first day, it's like somebody sticks a straw in you and just sucks the life out of you. You know, I don't know. It's like, again, this barrier has to go up around you, because I'm a hair's breadth of away from rocking in a corner now, because I don't know if I can do this anymore. Um, and nobody or nothing can prepare you for the onslaught of court, of a trial.
Mm.
Um, they, I don't know what pleasure they get out of belittling people, victims or
Mm.
survivors of a crime like this. I don't know what they get out of it. I don't know what they gain. Um, but they certainly are fantastic at doing it.
Mm.
And the fact that, he was acquitted because of lack of evidence, I'm not surprised by that. The Portuguese police were brutal, to be quite honest. They did nothing. I didn't give my so-called statement. I'd never given a statement before in my life,
Mm.
and I didn't give a statement. I never gave them a statement. And I didn't know that until 16 years later, when I actually did give a statement. That's another grueling process. Jesus Christ. That was over a few days that I had to kind of do that twice, once in Ireland and then again in Germany.
So did you feel in all those years had you basically given up on it? Did you feel
Oh
that
yeah.
this isn't going to go anywhere? And then
I
when this
yeah. I
development
never
happened,
imagined that it would ever become a thing, let
mm,
alone a case. Like I'd given up on that. And to be honest with you, I wasn't strong enough then at all,
mm,
um, to even push for something to come out of it because I hadn't got it in me. And I know my parents wanted to more, but they were going off me, if you know what I mean. Because essentially I would have been the one that had to stand up and do all this, and I just wasn't able.
mm,
So 10 years after, so it would have been, I think it was, well, it was actually January 2015. I went on the Late Late Show. Um, it was 10 years after, what had happened. And I'd eventually convinced myself that I needed to get more help than just inside my own circle. I needed professional help. So I went to the Rape Crisis Centre. Um, and it was the best thing I ever did, to be totally honest. And again, I don't say this lightly. If I hadn't have gone there, I wouldn't be alive. And I really I really do mean that.
mm,
So I obviously had access to their services for a long time then, that I got to a point in my life where, you know, it was still there very much a part of my world, but it wasn't the only part of my world. And I built up a bit more strength in myself to be able to kind of stand on my own 2 feet a bit better. And I wanted to give them something back, I suppose, and to give something to other people who, all right, our stories may be different and how we got here may be different, but we're all experiencing or feeling something very
mm,
similar because of what happened to us. So, there's so many women out there, particularly that don't seek help, um, I feel they deserve more than spending the rest of their lives living in a hole. Basically, I was in a hole of if trying to mask myself to the outside world that I was okay when really, really inside, like the
mm,
blocks were falling, I was crumbling, and I was getting to a point where the foundation was just gone. So I needed to, I did work on that a lot. So when I went on the Late Late Show, again, it wasn't for any sort of fame or anything like that. It was to promote the Rape Crisis Centre and the amazing work that they do, because I'm testament to that work. Like I am proof in the pudding. I'm all them things, that I'm here because of them. So I even if just one person had a rang in that short time that I was on the show, that and it helped them, then I would have, for me, it was chalking it down and saying, I don't know,
mm.
I made something good out of a bad situation. And I never kind of got involved publicly in anything after that then. I
Yeah.
had been sent a lot of offers from, different newspapers for art, and that wasn't my thing. I got involved locally where I was, and quietly, I suppose,
Mm,
in lots of different ways, particularly helping young mothers, lone parents who are homeless. I set up different initiatives to try and help them, and just be kind of like somebody that people in my area who may have experienced something like that might be able to call,
to come
who
to.
could give them, yeah. So yeah, I suppose good things have come out of what have happened, but
Mm.
I still
Because I
wish I
was
was on here for a number one
for different
top
reasons.
selling single. Yeah, yeah. I wish I was
Well,
chart topping.
I don't we all? I know.
Yeah,
I was going to just ask you, and I think you're kind of nearly already answering the question for me before I ask it. But you mentioned the first day of that trial and
yeah.
going in and to your mum and saying, I don't, I'm done. What kept you going in the
My
end?
kids, my kids. Yeah. Um, honestly, like it sounds very corny. I'm sure, like oh,
Mm.
my kids keep me going. My kids drive me mad at times. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm an actual real person.
Yeah.
Um, but my eldest is nearly 20 and is a boy, my son, and I'm really working on teaching him lessons about how to be a good man. That's my job as a parent. But my daughters are only 12 and 8, and I kind of had to take a moment and say, do I want this for them going up? Could I really look back at this and say I gave up after coming this far, after all the sacrifices, not just me, like my whole family had made,
Yeah.
in getting me here. I mean that emotionally supporting me and all that they did, and the lengths that had been gone. It wasn't about everybody else, don't get me wrong. I wanted to finish it myself.
Mm.
But I think the driving force behind that was my kids, because I wanted to show them that, it's worth, seeing it through. Like,
And I mean, unfortunately, you didn't get the result you wanted, which is obviously,
not
I'm
yet.
sure. Well, that's my next question. You're ahead of me, which is great because I
Ahead of
mean,
the game.
listen, I'd rather let you talk than ask you a million questions, but that is my next question. I suppose you didn't get the justice you wanted, but is that the end of the road, or where can you take this next?
Well, look, again, I'm not too well up on the German legal system, so I'm not going to profess to be and start spouting stuff that I don't know. So
Mm.
what I do know, in very layman's terms, is that there is an option for me to, and all of us, there wasn't just my case. There was five of us here together, five
Mm.
cases here together, and each case had its own layers, like different charges within them.
Yes.
So there is an option to appeal in the German court system. Like, it's not a guarantee that you will appeal. It goes to what's known as a chamber. So, this chamber, which I imagine, again, I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's similar to our DPP. Like, so it would
Yeah.
go to these people, and they would decide whether or not they felt, that it wasn't a fair trial.
Mm.
And I'm going to say I didn't feel that it was a fair trial, not just for me, but for us all.
Mm.
Um, and they will make the decision on whether or not they will allow for an appeal to go forward. And if it does, it goes to like an upper court,
Okay.
a different judge. Yeah, same jurisdiction. And I won't know about the outcome of that, like whether or not they will allow for that to go forward.
But
For a while.
you obviously want to see it appealed. That's your hope.
I do want to see it appealed. One thing I will be honest with you and say is, like, if it's appealed and they approve, or whatever you'd say in the legal term, that it goes ahead, I have to go through all this again.
Yeah.
It's effectively like it all starts over again. The
Mm-hmm.
trial starts again. I have to testify again.
Mm.
Do I want to do that? No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie to you. It's the last thing I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, I find it really distressing, the idea that I would be made to do that again in order to have my chance
Yeah.
at seeking justice. But most importantly, that a person like him is kept from walking in human society around other people and their children and women. Like, I mean,
And
what
I
happened to me has happened. Like, I can't change that. But the idea that a person like him, and I know there's lots of them, it doesn't even bear thinking about. Like, but we know, like, people know what he is. To let somebody out like that and not give it everything I can to prevent that, I think I would regret that till the day I die. So I think there's, like, I feel compelled to do it. I don't want to do it because of what I'd have to do to get there, but I would feel like it would be remiss of me not to, and it would be unfair on other people for me not to, and I'm not about unfairness. So yeah, I'll give it another whack.
Oh, I sincerely hope you get that chance, and I know you'll absolutely, you'll smash it. I'm sure. I know it's probably very difficult to go through it again, but you've done it before. You can do it again.
Yeah, hopefully.
Can I ask you just? I don't want to linger too much on him, but
No, go for it.
he is facing a release date soon. I think
September,
it's
yeah.
this year. Do you worry about that? Do you fear him on the streets?
100%. I mean, I'm going to take me and my case and my stuff out of this for a moment. Facts are the convictions that he has, that, and these have all been proven. They've been, sentences and everything, charges have been in courts of law. So this is not just me surmising stuff in my own head based on my own experience. So, this is a man who clearly is a predator of children. He has been, convicted of sexual acts against children. He's been convicted of raping an elderly lady. He's been convicted of thievery and robbery and drug dealing, and God, the list is endless. Like,
Yeah.
do I want a person like him in society? Absolutely not, for my children or anyone else's child, or for myself, like for people in general. So no, I certainly don't feel safe with the fact that he's getting out on a personal level because of what I believe like he done on me. Do I want him out? No.
And do you work?
No.
Forgive me this question, but I'm
No.
sure it's maybe a thought that's gone through your head. The fact that you have taken him to court and gone with it publicly, do you fear for yourself, your
Of
own
course.
personal self with?
Yeah, 100%. Of course I would. He knows who I am. Well, he always knew who I was. I just didn't know
Mm-hmm.
who he was. But I suppose now at this stage, he knows me a lot better as this person that I am now.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't live in that fear, if you know what I mean. Like, and I have to remind myself all the time that, I am not that kind of person. I don't live that kind of lifestyle, at all. Like, in fact, quite the opposite, thankfully. But I, I can't allow for somebody, I can't allow for him to take any more from me than he already has. And I'm not going to give him that. Like, is there a fear in the back of my mind? 100%. I'd be a liar if I said otherwise, because but my fear isn't just, as I said, about me. My fear is just like it's a wider thing. It's bigger than that. And I mean, if he wants to come at me again, he better put his boxing gloves on, because I'm ready for him this time. Do you know? I'm ready for him. I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not a baby. And I will kick 10 shades of shite out of him if he came near me again. But
Mm.
on a real human level, and and not to be funny or anything, like yeah, he terrifies me. Like, yeah, he does. So
And I want to talk about, because I want to, I suppose, finish up on what you're doing now in your life now and the advocacy that
yeah,
you're doing. And but it'd be remiss of me if I didn't at least ask one question regarding the Madeleine McCann case and the
yeah.
connection there. Obviously, he is a suspect in that case, and in terms of this process, did you ever have any? I suppose, did the McCann family ever reach out to you, or did you ever have any involvement with them at all?
No,
Following.
I've never spoken to them, or genuinely
Mm,
never had any contact with them at all. They're kind of,
mm,
I suppose, relationship with the German police people, whoever they like, they would have a completely different one. I think I don't
mhm.
know. Like, to me, but from my side of it, no, I've never. Like, I'd actually love to speak to them, um,
Yeah.
for completely different reasons, I suppose, than maybe that other people would think. Like, um, I feel like the best way I can describe it is, okay, so if you're in this space with strangers and something really, really bad happens, you're automatically connected to these people for the rest of your life, because they're the only ones who know what this experience is.
Yeah.
You can explain it and explain it to the world around you, but the people who are in that room or in that thing that day are the only people who know. So oddly, and maybe as fucked up as this sounds, Paul, me
Mm,
and anyone else who had experience of this man are connected to each other.
mhm.
And I obviously never met beautiful Madeleine. And, you read so much of these stories, and, she's in and around the same age as my son. So, as a mother, and a parent, I can't imagine what that family have went through and go through on a daily basis. I just don't know. I couldn't, my mind wouldn't let me go there. But for me, you know, not that it makes any odds on any of this, because who am I when it comes to her world or her family? But as I said earlier, there was always a guilt in me that I wasn't stronger when I was younger
Mhm.
to do more, because in a world of ifs, if I had done that, if I had stood up more, if I had have insisted on them investigating my case, all these different ifs, maybe she would still be with our parents. And like, I completely understand, and I get, and I say it to myself all the time, I know it's not my fault. I know all this. I get all that. Like, that's on them. It's not on me. All that stuff. Like,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, like, I am human and I am going to think them things. And I just really wish that it was different for us all,
Yeah.
like, to be quite honest. And for her to get the justice that she deserves, equally as much as I do and everyone else who suffered at the hands of this person. So,
Mm.
she is just, it's her family who deserve, and she deserves her justice, and her time as much as we do, you know?
And hopefully the German police uncover some evidence, because it does seem at this point that they don't have enough to charge him in relation to it.
Yeah,
But
that's what I've read as well. Yeah.
do you believe anyway? Certainly he has the MO. He's the person responsible for Madeleine.
One thing I will say is, it's the unfortunate thing about historic cases,
Mm.
and to give credit to to the BK, I know they're getting a lot of bad press across the place, and I get that, like,
Mm.
but they weren't handed this case yesterday as a fresh case. This is like years later. They're investigating case that's, so historic, including my own and others. Like, so they're working like really, really hard to piece together things that happened my 20 years ago.
Mm.
So, you know, I trust, like, genuinely trust that they are not going to invest their time, their money, their efforts into investigating cases like mine, like Madeleine's, like I don't want to name other ones because I don't know if they've went public with their cases, but other
Sure. Yeah.
cases that if they didn't think for 1 second that there was some legitimacy in it, and that they didn't feel that it warranted it, like,
Mm.
as I said at the beginning, they're extremely efficient, and they literally dot their I's and cross their T's. Like, it's like unbelievable that
Mm.
I just could not see them putting the time and effort and money into continuing something like this if they hadn't got a reason to be honest. So yeah, I do believe that he's the person that done it. I do believe, unfortunately, that in what the German police are saying, because they obviously, whatever it is, I don't know if and I'd say that genuinely, I have not got a clue, but I know as much
Mm.
as you from what you read in the news. If they have this evidence, whatever it is, I believe that they do, and unfortunately, yeah,
Mm.
that he's the person who done it.
I want to finish on I suppose, a more positive note, because I was actually drawn to your social media page because I saw one of the videos that I think you were gathered in Dublin city centre with a number of survivors of abuse, and you were speaking
Yeah,
out about violence against women. And obviously, yeah, I've seen now that I know you were in the Dáil only
yeah,
the other week in relation to a motion put forward by Ruth Coppinger.
yeah,
Um, and you're speaking about gender-based violence, and there are points that Ruth Coppinger has raised, that she was trying to get the government's attention, and I want to talk to you a bit about that. I'd rather you
yeah,
tell me a bit about that. But why
yeah.
why do you feel now that you want to get involved with this and speak out and be an advocate for other women?
Yeah. Well, look, just to say, like, this for me, for me personally, it wasn't even about politics.
Mm.
I think, whatever your political allegiance is, put it to one side when it comes to people. And I met Ruth. She's a lovely, lovely woman, and a Trojan worker. Jesus, I've
Mhm.
never encountered. Yeah, she's really, and you look at, they're very lucky we're in our constituency to have her as their TD. But I don't vote. I can't vote for her. I don't live in our area even. So
Mhm.
it was nothing to do with that. To be fair to her, because she knows my politics, and so we became together, not just me and her. I mean, the group of us, because we all have the same want to see the changes in legislation. And for me, it really hit home because of how I was treated in court,
Yeah.
and with the use of my counselling notes, and things like that being used against me.
Because
I
that's
also
it.
found, yeah, sorry, go on.
That's I don't want to interrupt you, but
No, you're
that's
fine.
when you mentioned it earlier, I meant to come back to it. That is a
Yeah,
huge issue now that is being debated, that just to change the law so that women, so that victims of abuse, that their counselling notes are not just available to
the
the
defence.
perpetrator, and
Just
that's
to
what
give you
happened
a
in your
small
case.
background, Paul, really, really
Mm.
briefly, but like, if you were to rob a car in the morning,
Hmm.
and you're found, you're caught and you're brought to court, and there's a case against you in court, they can't look for your counselling notes.
Hmm.
The only time that they can look for counselling notes is in cases of gender-based violence or rape. And essentially it's to discredit the witness.
Yeah.
And that's really all that they can be used for. And I find that really shameful. I really, really do. That, and again, not to spout a load of facts and figures because I'm not great with numbers myself, but this made sense to me. Like 5% are reported, and of that 5%, only 14% make it to trial. So, I mean, that's nothing in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely nothing. And of that 14% to 5%, these people had the hoops that they have to go through, the amount of themselves that they have to give over for someone. And if they do get a sentence, if they are found guilty of this crime, the sentences are menial, they're non-existent. Like, they've carried out these horrendous crimes, loads of different cases and stories I've heard of, particularly over the last few years, of, ongoing abuse every day, like torturing these women in their lives and destroying them, and they get 4 years suspended, maybe 2. Like, I don't see the justice in that, and I can't. Look, I waived my right to anonymity unbeknownst to myself when I went on the Late Late Show 10 years ago. So I'm here. Do I like putting my face out there? Not particularly. Won't lie to you. But I'm here, and I'm reasonably comfortable as I could be with doing that. But that doesn't make me any more of an advocate than the person who is at home and maybe sending a letter to someone, or being a support for somebody else, or taking the time to go and speak to somebody and get the help that they need. This is like, there's so many different ways to kind of advocate on behalf of people who have experienced things like that. So for us, I suppose the main goal at the minute is to see a change in legislation and a more victim-centred approach to trials like this, and to, educate the likes of the Gardaí, the judicial system, the jury on how they go ahead with trials like this, because it's not your average crime. Yeah. It happens a lot, unfortunately, but it's not your bog standard crime. It has to be treated sensitively, and victims and survivors of crimes like that need and deserve to be treated with respect. And again, down to the language of being a witness. We're not witnesses. I said this the other day. I didn't sit back with a bag of popcorn and just like observe.
Yeah.
I was very much a part of the crime that happened to me, 110 million %. I didn't want to be what I was. And same goes in Ireland. They're a victim to, or they're a witness to a crime. And I just find that use of language immediately creates this demeaning kind of, they're instantly demeaning a victim. They're taking that away from them. You're not a victim of a crime, you're a witness. Instantly you're going in there on the back foot, because for me personally, I remember the day that my counsellor had to tell me that she was handing over my counselling notes to the Gardaí. I'll never forget that, and I haven't gone since.
I was going to say that I saw that you have mentioned that you haven't gone back counselling.
Look, I said this the other day, and I'll be honest with you, do I need it? You bet your bottom dollar I do. I'm just very lucky I have a good support network around me and a great group of friends. They're my armchair counsellors for the moment, and God love them. But no, I feel that I just don't want to give anybody else any more balls to throw at me, to be quite honest, because I for all I don't want to go through all this again. If I do, it's like having your second baby. You know what to expect. I know what to expect now, and I'm just not giving it to them. I'm just not giving them any more, as little of myself as I can this time around. I
mean, I don't know if you have any idea. Yeah, you're advocating quite a bit, and you're seeing the results of that. But I wonder, do you know how much of an impact it really has? Even you just speaking out, people listening to you in this podcast, I'm sure will make a huge difference, because there are people. There's 1 in 4 women out there who've been attacked, assaulted in some way, sexually, and I think it means a lot for someone like yourself to speak out. It really does go a long way.
And I suppose for people who are listening to this, like you've just said there, 1 in 4, and I know I said something like this on my social media the other day, but I really meant it. Like, predators don't discriminate. They don't pick you. Well, maybe they have a type. I don't know. They're all, their own things. But realistically, that 1 in 4, you don't have a choice on whether you're not that 1 in 4. Like, they don't care what colour skin you have, what colour hair you have, how tall, small, fat, skinny, who your ma is. They don't care. They're predators.
Yeah.
So the likelihood is that you and I and everyone around either knows somebody who has experienced something like this, or knows somebody and they haven't told you that they've experienced something like this. But
Yeah.
if you realistically pick 100 people, who are you going to choose? Like, would you be able to, like, the statistics shouldn't be there. Look, I'm not naive enough to think that, changes in legislation and stuff are going to stop predators committing crimes like this. Unfortunately, it's not.
Mm.
However, it's a deterrent. Right now, there is no deterrent. 14% to 5% is not a deterrent. There's nothing in place there that is going to say, Jesus, if I do this or if I follow through on this, I could potentially get 15, 20 years in prison. No,
Yeah.
there's nothing there. And quite honestly, if they do get this small menial sentence, they're put away with the likes of themselves and they have a great time. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm.
you and I pay for it. So I just
It's
don't think,
crazy.
yeah, I don't think it's fair. So yeah, I think advocacy is fantastic, but
Mm.
I think if we look a little bit closer to home, sometimes, the people that are silently advocating could be our next door neighbour or your friend or your
Mm.
sister, even or unfortunately, or your mother.
Mm.
I've unfortunately encountered an awful lot of women of an age who have, disclosed to me that they were victims of some form of gender-based violence, particularly in the era that they would have grown up in,
And
and couldn't or didn't feel that they could tell
yeah.
anybody. And while the taboo is still definitely there, and people even struggle to say the word rape, I get it, like 100%. But can you imagine in the 1950s or the 60s or the 70s in Ireland, good old Catholic Ireland? No. You put up and you shut up and you get on with it, and that was just it. Well, things have changed, and it is 2025. There is a huge, huge part of, society that needs to kind of catch up with the times, particularly the law. As I think Ruth said the other day, Eamon De Valera wasn't talking about council notes when he was writing,
Hmm.
things like that. And like things need to catch up with the times. But, unfortunately, there's an awful lot of women of it who are, kind of maybe in their 60s, 70s that have experienced stuff like this. And now I feel privileged to be able to maybe connect with them without ever having to speak to them, because I want to show them that women are changing and we're coming on and we're with you. We're shouting for you now. We mightn't have known then, but we know now, and we want things to change because, as I said, I can't change what happened to me. Nobody can. Um, but I'll do me fucking best that if it happens to somebody else, that they won't be treated the way I was or the way that other people that I know have been treated. Because there's no woman in this country that deserves to be treated like a second class citizen. And I swear to God, I'll die until that changes in some way meaningful. Like, I really will. I'll keep trying.
Oh, yeah, fair play to you for doing so, and I think you're going to inspire so many more to do so. Tell me a bit about just before we finish up, about the march you're doing on the weekend.
Yeah. So, we look, isn't it mad when you get a load of different minds together, what people can bring to the table. I can't take credit for the march, and I wouldn't, because all the hard work was done by an organisation called ROSA, a fantastic organisation actually, who got in touch with me a few months ago and asked me to speak at one of their meetings, and I was delighted to be able to come and speak. And I've since stayed in touch with them, and they've arranged a few different things that I really, thought were very worthwhile, and they do great work. So look, they've arranged this march. Historically, International Women's Day was a day of marching, and it was a day for women to kind of say no more. And we're trying to do the same this year in Ireland. So from what I know anyway, there's three main ones. And there's one in Dublin, there's one in Limerick, and there's one in Cork. There may be others across the country. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what we're doing. So we're all going to rock out on the 8th of March and hopefully make some noise and let the people in power who have the power to make these changes know that, we're joining together, and we're not going to accept the treatment that women are currently receiving in this country. And really, I suppose on the flip side of that, it's a day of solidarity. If thankfully you're not a victim or survivor of gender-based violence, as we said, you probably know somebody who is. It's to stand with them. And simply, if you just don't agree with how the system is at the minute, come
Yeah.
out and make a bit of noise, we'll have a bit of crack and go for a little ramble from City Hall up to the Department of Justice, and who knows where we'll end up after that. So yeah, so that's the idea for the march, and in that, myself and my friends, Paula Doyle and Donna McCarthy, who are also fellow victims and survivors, we launched a little jewellery collection with a lovely girl. Her name is Jade. She's an Irish-owned little business, jewellery business. She hand makes everything, and we don't know Jade, by the way. I ordered from her a few different pieces over the years for gifts. So I reached out to her and asked her if she'd be interested in helping us, and she didn't think twice. So it was really kind of her to come on board. Just for the naysayers out there, this is not a monetary thing for us whatsoever. We don't get paid for it. We're not earning anything from this whatsoever. Jade, it pays her materials and her time, which I think she's more than earned. And the rest, like the proceeds, then go to the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, who we've all accessed over the years. And that's just to be, transparent on that. There's not a business venture for any of us. We launched it to highlight International Women's Day in our march, and also just, again, another kind of silent or quiet way for people who are victims and survivors to wear their chain and feel a bit connected to other people out there. And there's also something there for people who we feel are our lifesavers. And I think you'll deserve one of them, because it's people like yourself who give the platform to it.
Geez,
no, listen, listen, this is the whole idea of it, though. It's obviously for us, we have family and friends who are, are in our circle of steel, as I do call them, and they're my lifesavers. But the people who give the platform to people like us to be able to spread our message, the people who say something or speak up, the people who don't get involved in kind of rape conversation with the lads, and who treat women respectfully, or who just do a small act of standing up to what this culture currently is that's out there at the moment. They too are lifesavers. That's another step in change, and encouraging and bringing change to our wider society. So yes, definitely, I think that's why we wanted people like that to wear these little pieces of jewellery, to say, you know what, I play my part in trying to bring some change, and in doing that, genuinely, they save lives, because it's so important.
Well, thank you, Hazel. It's my pleasure to speak to you. And, I do a lot of different things in this job, but whenever I speak to people such as yourself, who are, just incredible in the face of having gone through the most unimaginable crime, it gives me joy to give you that platform and to share your story with people. So thank you.